Hello, this is Mr. Rogers, and this is an introduction to 3dsmax 2020, which is a 3D program designed for modeling, gaming, any kind of work in a virtual 3D world. This part is going to investigate the task panes, which are over here, up on the top and on the bottom, and the viewports, which are in the middle. The viewports are how you see the shapes, objects, anything that you draw. In this case, we'll be starting with primitives. It just shows you what they look like. So as I move over to this task pane has to do with creating things. Creates everything. So we're going to start by creating some standard primitives like boxes, spheres, cylinders, toruses, teapots, things like that. I'm just going to click on a box real quick. And I'm going to move my cursor over to the top viewport. It's really a good idea in these programs to always start from the top because you're seeing things in X and Y. It's really easier to understand what you're making and to position items on the field. So to draw, you just click and drag, let go, and then click again, and then it will draw up on the Z-axis. So there it is. The neat thing here is that unlike Tinkercad and SketchUp, the programs we've worked with in the classroom, this program allows us to see this very same object in 4 different views. So this would be the top view, looking top down on the box. Now you'll notice it's wireframe, but by pressing F3, you can easily turn on the skins so you can see the skin of that. If I move to this viewport, this is front. So this is what that same rectangle looks like from the very front. And this is from the left. So that same rectangle or that same rectangular prism from the left. And then perspective is a viewport that we can see it from kind of an angle, like from an angle from the left or right. This viewport is the one that you would want to move around your scene with as you're building your scene. So let's put another shape in here. Let's say we put in a sphere. See what that looks like. Nice. So we have a sphere. This is what it looks like from the top. This is what it looks like from the front. And that's from the left and the right. So again, you want to throw in, and there's a lot of interesting shapes that will come out in this as you design and build. And just please play around and see what you can throw in here. Now on the bottom right-hand side, this very small area that my mouse is in right now, this is how the camera sees things. So for instance, this is the zoom. So I can zoom in this viewport. You notice I'm zooming in here. Or I can zoom into this viewport or this one. So either way. Now this zoom is a little different. This is zoom all the viewports at once. So now when I click on this one, you'll notice that everything zooms at the same time. Now I'm not moving the objects in the field or the scene. I'm not moving them. I'm just moving the way my camera sees things. This object here, this is, we'll get back to that one. This one kind of brings us out. So let's say we're working close up. If we click this box here, this will bring us out of the scene. And you can hold it down to get like, there's the whole world. And if you select a single object, like this sphere, and you want to get close to it, then hold it down again, the zoom extents, hit it, and then it'll bring that object close, so you can get close to your work. Let's go back out to see the world. This button down here is a zoom region, so you click on it, and then you basically bring your cursor into any one of the viewports, and let's say I just want to work in this corner. Then you just click and drag a box, let go, and then that's where you'll be working. It allows you to zoom into that field. Once again, hit zoom extends, and that brings the world into view. This pans the camera, so you can just kind of drag it back and forth. Once again, I am not moving the shapes. I'm just moving how I see them. This one here is orbit. I caution you about orbit. Try not to use orbit in the top, front, or left viewports. Only use orbit here. And the reason is once you use orbit in any of these other viewports, it will change their perspective, and it's really a good idea to keep them where they are. But you're welcome to use it here, and all orbit does is moves the camera, pivots it around the objects that are in the scene. And this last one is just toggling the actual viewport. So let's say I just wanted to work close up in this viewport in the front view, then I can make that full screen and then toggle it back. For any one of these, that works. So once again, down in the corner, these are the camera controls. Allows me to move my camera around the scene and to easily see what I'm looking at. Remember, this is it says it's a three-dimensional program, but really we're working in 2D. So it's important that we move our camera around a lot, because really it's hard to understand where some of these shapes are if we don't move them around. So down here, camera buttons. Over here, this is our creation area. Now I haven't got to the top yet, so let's talk about that quickly. On the top, we have a select button. So if I click on this, it allows me to select any of the objects. So I can click on the sphere, the rectangular prism, or the torus, and then I can do things with it. This is a select by name, which is kind of handy because you can name the objects. And as you get a lot of objects in a scene, sometimes up into the hundreds or thousands of objects, depending on what you're building, it's really kind of nice to be able to get them in a list. And you can actually search for certain objects as you design and build. We won't get to these region selections pieces, but this one is very important, select and move. So I like this one, it's a move, so it does both. You can select and move, so it does them both. But the cool thing is that it moves by axis. So if I'm in the top viewport, you'll notice it moves in all the viewports, but on the axis relative to, that view. So if I'm moving it on the y-axis from the front, then it doesn't look like it's moving at all in the top viewport. It's very interesting, and I really like this feature. It really helps me to understand where the space is in my models. This one over here is scale. So you can take any object, and if you wanted to scale it up, to scale, you could go on anyone. I usually do this center yellow, and that's uniformly scales the object up and down. So that's really handy. This last one that we'll be talking about in this session is rotate. So best seen with the rectangle. So if I select and move the rectangle, then switch over to rotate, I can then rotate that rectangle. And again, I'm using the top viewport here, but I could just as easily come over here and rotate it from the front, and I could rotate it from the left, and you can see it's really getting out of whack here. Try not to manipulate any of the objects in perspective. If you do, they won't line up well. You'll have some issues or problems later, guaranteed, because perspective doesn't give you the true kind of view. Always try to move in top or front or left, and then just kind of look at it in perspective. That's our preview place. I'm trying to think what else we could talk about real quick. Last piece in this. I guess the last thing I would talk in this lesson would be the parameters. So this torus that we've created here, you'll notice it's kind of choppy and chunky. We can change things about it. We can come back to this after we've made it. To do that, you come over to this task pane where we created it. You'll notice that next to create, there is a button called modify. So we can click on modify, and then you'll see here are all the radiuses of that torus. So I can take that outer radius 1 down. I can take the inner radius and make that thicker so it's a big, fat, yummy, delicious donut. I can also increase the segments and the sides to make it smoother. So if it's smoother, then it doesn't look quite so choppy. Or I can go the other way, and then it gets really kind of hard with the polygons there. You can chop it up to small. So smoother or smaller. All right, and that's the parameters for that. And you can do that with any shape, as you can increase or decrease its parameters. That's the end of part 1.